Control your screaming brat or I'll have security remove you both from this aircraft immediately. The sharp crack of flesh meeting flesh echoed through the first-class cabin. Flight attendant Cathel's palm had just struck Danielle Carter's cheek as she cradled her 6-month-old daughter Zoe against her chest. The baby's cries intensified from the sudden violence. Passengers in nearby pulled out phones recording what they assumed was justified discipline of an unruly traveler. It all started on a bright, sunny afternoon flight from Atlanta to New York. The air inside the plane buzzed with chatter. The engines purred softly and families shuffled down the aisle looking for their seats. Amid the crowd was Danielle Carter, a young black mother cradling her 6-month-old son Malik. Danielle had that look every parent knows, exhausted but determined. She'd spent the last 2 days visiting her sick mother, and all she wanted was to get home, feed her baby, and rest. With Malik nestled in one arm and a diaper bag slung over her shoulder, she tried to lift her carry-on into the overhead bin. But before she could even get it halfway up, a sharp voice cut through the noise. "Ma'am, you're holding up the line. Can't you move faster?" Passengers turned to look. The voice came from Kathy, a flight attendant with a forced smile and cold eyes. Danielle blinked, caught off guard. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I just need 1 second to..." Kathy rolled her eyes dramatically and took a step closer. "Some people think the world revolves around them," she muttered loud enough for others to hear. Laughter rippled from a few nearby passengers, but most looked uncomfortable. Danielle adjusted her baby and tried again to push her bag in. But suddenly Kathy slapped the diaper bag off her shoulder, shouting, "Move it or get off my plane!" The baby screamed. Danielle froze and stunned as the bag hit the floor. Then, unbelievably, Kathy reached out and slapped Danielle's arm, leaving a red mark. Gasps filled the cabin. One man stood up and yelled, "Hey! You can't do that!" Another woman fumbled for her phone, recording every second. Danielle's heart pounded, but she didn't cry or shout. She just looked straight at Kathy, eyes calm but fierce, and whispered, "You just made the biggest mistake of your life." The baby whimpered against her chest as silence fell over the plane. Every passenger knew this wasn't just an argument. This was something much deeper, something that was about to shake the entire airline to its core. And soon, the world would know exactly who they had just messed with. The captain heard the commotion from the cockpit and immediately called for security. Through the narrow aisle, 2 uniformed officers stepped in, confusion on their faces. Passengers were murmuring, some still recording. The tension in the cabin was thick enough to cut through. Kathy, the flight attendant, was quick to defend herself. "She was being aggressive," she said, pointing at Danielle. "I was just doing my job. She wouldn't follow instructions." But the passengers had seen it all, and the evidence was undeniable. One man stood up, phone in hand, and said firmly, "I have the whole thing on video. She didn't do a thing wrong." Others nodded, backing him up. The air buzzed with outrage and disbelief. Still, the captain gave the order. "Escort the passenger off the plane for questioning." Danielle didn't resist. She looked down at baby Malik, who was now quietly sucking his thumb, his tiny face still red from crying. She took a deep breath, adjusted her bag, and walked calmly toward the exit as every eye followed her. Even one of the officers looked uneasy. As he gently guided her down the jet bridge, he whispered, "Ma'am, I'm so sorry for what happened." Danielle gave him a small, knowing smile. "Don't worry, officer. Everything will be taken care of." But what no one on that flight knew, not the passengers, not the captain, and definitely not Kathy, was who she truly was. Because Danielle Carter wasn't just another passenger. She was the wife of Ethan Carter, the billionaire founder and CEO of Carter Air, the very airline they were flying on. Ethan Carter, a name respected across the aviation industry. A man who had started with nothing and built an empire on integrity, equality, and class. His company was known for treating every passenger like family. He believed in kindness over profit, and now that same company, his company, had just humiliated his wife and newborn child in front of an entire plane. Danielle didn't need to shout or make threats. Because when Ethan Carter heard what happened, the skies themselves were about to tremble. That evening, Danielle returned home, her eyes still red from exhaustion and disbelief. She had held herself together the entire day, through the questioning, the whispers, and the silent stares, but the moment she stepped into her house, the tears finally came. "Ethan Carter, Her husband was in the living room reviewing flight data on his laptop. When he saw her face, his expression softened instantly. He stood up and walked over, worry etched across his features. "What happened, baby?" he asked, gently taking Malik from her arms. Danielle hesitated. She didn't want to cause chaos, but the truth couldn't be hidden anymore. With trembling hands, she pulled out her phone, opened the viral clip, and pressed play. The sound of the slap echoed through the living room. The video showed everything: Kathy's anger, Danielle's composure, and the baby's terrified cry. Ethan's face went still. His jaw clenched. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, in a voice cold enough to freeze the air, he said 5 words that would shake an entire corporation. "Ground every flight immediately." His head of operations stammered over the phone, thinking there was some kind of emergency. "Sir, is this about maintenance?" Or Ethan cut him off. "Every flight, now." Within hours, the company's jets were being ordered to land at the nearest airports. The airline's communication lines lit up. Pilots were confused. Passengers were stranded. No one understood why yet. Meanwhile, online, the storm was growing. The video: flight attendant slaps black mom holding baby, who had gone viral. Millions of views poured in within hours. Celebrities spoke out demanding justice. News anchors debated the incident live on air. Hashtags like "Mocking Justice for Danielle" and "Mocking Airline Racism" flooded every social media platform. The story had become a symbol, a moment of truth for every person who'd ever been disrespected because of their skin color or status. Kathy, realizing what she'd done, panicked. She deleted her accounts, tried to hide her name, but it was too late. Screenshots had already spread. Her face was everywhere. Ethan watched it all unfold from his office window, eyes hard with resolve. "They wanted to see what real accountability looks like," he said quietly. "Let's show them." And just like that, the man behind the airline turned from a CEO into a storm of justice. The next morning, the world woke up to chaos, news alerts, hashtags, and headlines plastered across every screen. The video had reached over 50 million views overnight. Everyone wanted to hear one thing: what would the airline say? At exactly 9 a.m., an emergency press conference was announced. Cameras filled the room. Reporters from CNN, BBC, and every major outlet took their seats, expecting the usual: a carefully worded statement, a PR apology, and maybe a promise to review procedures. But what they got was something no one had ever seen before. The doors opened and Ethan Carter walked in, sharp suit, calm eyes, but a storm behind his composure. Beside him was Danielle holding baby Malik. The sight alone sent a ripple through the crowd. Flashbulbs went off like lightning. Ethan took a slow breath and stepped up to the podium. "Yesterday, one of my employees humiliated my wife and a mother in front of a plane full of people," he began, his voice low but steady. "Let me be clear. This isn't about family. It's about humanity." The room fell silent. Every reporter leaned forward. Even the camera crews stopped whispering. Ethan continued. "As of today, every staff member involved in this incident has been terminated. The management team that failed to protect our passengers is suspended." He paused for a moment, letting his words sink in. "And this airline will undergo the largest anti-discrimination reform in aviation history." Murmurs spread across the room. Reporters shot their hands up, trying to ask questions, but Ethan wasn't finished. He looked up again, eyes sharp, voice unwavering. "Every passenger deserves respect, no matter their color, their class, or their seat number. If we can't protect that, we don't deserve to fly." Click, click, click. Cameras flashed as those words echoed across the room. Within minutes, the clip went viral. Millions praised Ethan for standing up, not just as a husband, but as a leader with integrity. Activists called it the speech that changed aviation. Meanwhile, Kathy's world collapsed. Her flight attendant license was permanently revoked. She faced multiple civil lawsuits, not from Danielle for revenge, but for justice. For the first time, the internet wasn't just angry, it was inspired. And Ethan Carter had just rewritten what accountability really looked like. Months later, the skies looked different. The world had moved on, but for Danielle Carter, every takeoff still carried a memory, one that would never truly fade. She sat quietly in first class, Malik now a chubby, curious baby tugging at her fingers. The engines hummed softly beneath them, the light from the window bathing them both in gold. For the first time since that awful day, Danielle felt peace. The airline, once at the center of outrage, had transformed completely. A new initiative called Fly Fair was born, led by Ethan and Danielle themselves. It wasn't just a program, it was a promise. Every new employee, from flight attendants to top executives, now underwent a powerful training program focusing on empathy, equality, and humanity. It wasn't about scripts or slogans. It was about understanding people. Posters at every airport now read, "Every seat deserves respect." Passengers noticed the difference, smiles that felt real, service that felt human. The airline had turned its darkest moment into its proudest legacy. Ethan and Danielle didn't stop there. Together, they donated millions to launch the Carter Foundation, a scholarship program for minority women in aviation and hospitality, helping others rise in the very industry that had once tried to silence her. Their story became a global symbol, not of revenge, but of redemption and resilience. During an interview months later, a journalist leaned forward and asked gently, "Do you forgive the woman who slapped you?" Danielle paused, her eyes thoughtful. Then she smiled, that calm, graceful smile the world had come to admire. "I forgive her," she said softly, "because forgiveness isn't weakness, it's freedom. But I hope she never forgets what it felt like to make someone feel small, because that's how real change begins." The room fell silent. Even the interviewer's eyes shimmered. Outside the window, a plane roared down the runway, strong, unstoppable. Danielle glanced toward it, holding baby Malik close to her chest. She whispered almost to herself, "They tried to break me mid-air, but I learned how to soar instead." And in that moment, her story, their story, wasn't just about an airline or a scandal. It became a symbol of strength, dignity, and hope. A reminder that sometimes the most powerful flights are born from the storms we survive. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more powerful and inspiring stories. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next one. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.